Nice to meet you. Where are you? Are you here?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks all for coming. 9 o'clock Monday morning, everybody's ready to hit the ground running. So good to see all of you here today. I want to thank Dr. Reid for coming. Pleasure to have you here. So Dr. Karl Reid is the Executive Director of the National Society for Black Engineers, or NSBE, as we always refer to it as. 30,000 plus student governed association headquartered in Virginia, whose mission is to increase the number of culturally responsible black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. Dr. Reid came to NSBE after some time at the United Negro College Fund, where he served as Senior Vice President of Research, Innovation, and Member College Engagement. Before UNCF, he was an Associate Dean of Undergraduate Education and the Director of the Office of Minority Education at MIT. He earned both his bachelor's and his master's degree at MIT in material science and engineering, and then a doctorate in education from Harvard Graduate School of Education. I like to say anybody that can work at MIT while also going to school at Harvard can bridge any background. So he's the right man. His research interests include exploring the relationships between racial identity and self-efficacy and their influence on academic achievement of African American males in higher ed. I first met Dr. Reid this summer at a TMS Diversity Summit. I had the pleasure of chairing a session he spoke in. And as I said, I've been to a number of events like that, and usually you can split the presentations into two groups. There's the qualitative presentations that talk about great successes and are really uplifting and heartwarming to see people advance. And then there are the quantitative talks where we talk about the numbers and the challenge, and they tend to have a different effect in terms of instilling excitement. It's a challenge. Dr. Reid was the first person I ever saw give a quantitative talk that also left me inspired that we're getting somewhere. And so that motivated me as much as anything else to reach out to him. And so I hope you'll be as inspired as I was. Thank you for joining us.
It's such a pleasure to be here at North Carolina State. And Justin, thank you for really the kind introduction. Great to reconnect with my very good friend Christine Grant. Christine and I were involved with NSBE together, me at MIT and Christine at Brown. And when we created these networks of chapters to come together and travel together, this was the days when fall regional conferences were not held in hotels but in dorm rooms and dormitories, and we would get these 15-passenger vans and pick the students up and drive to Stevens Tech and Princeton and others and sleep on the floors in the dormitories. Those were good times. Those were great times. And it's good to be here at North Carolina State. I actually visited North Carolina State some years ago when I was at UNCF. We created a linkage between historically black colleges and universities and the graduate program here. And we were bringing top students from 9 of the private HBCUs with which I work to NC State to expose them about the opportunities, the graduate opportunities here at the college. So I spent the day and a half here meeting with several of the officials, mostly around the diversity, the chief diversity officer. Hey, how are you doing? Chief diversity officers and several others who are here. But it's great to be here. I have not seen, of course, obviously, I've not seen your beautiful campus here at the Centennial campus. Christine gave me the tour of the campus, and I'm just looking forward to seeing really all that you can accomplish. What I'd like to do is talk with you about just my path to purpose. I know that there are several students who are in here in the room, and I'd like to just share some of my struggles and some of the challenges that I experienced, just so that with names like MIT and Halo behind and Harvard behind my name, there's a halo effect that's associated. I walk into a room and I have to prove that I'm not competent in most cases, which is wonderful. This is kind of the same case for NC State alumni as well, but it hasn't always been easy. And I think hearing some of the challenges that I experienced as a student, and I'll get to talk with some of the students later on about some of those challenges, really hopefully will inspire you as well. I do say that about faculty, that it's so very important for faculty to be transparent, that everything did not come easily for you. for students, because it really builds their sense of self-efficacy. If you could be successful and they can identify you, and they could be successful in their domain, then it will encourage them to really push and be resilient and be persistent, et cetera. I had a professor at Harvard in the graduate school, Dick Marnane, who's an economist. And the very first day of class, it was a large class, about 65 of us in the microeconomics of education, and he says, you know, I actually stutter. Just wanted you to know I stutter. And it was obvious early on that he stuttered because he was making introductory remarks. He says, now when I stutter, I don't want you to shrink back. I need you to help me with the word I'm struggling with. And I think from that point on, it just kind of set the tone for the whole class, that there was a connection that was made. And one of the things I will talk about is the importance of making that vertical connection, the quality of interaction between students and faculty and administration, and the quality of interaction with peers. So the vertical connection, vertical integration, horizontal integration is key for persistence. And that's what Vincent Tinto found out in institutional integration. The quality of interaction with faculty and the quality of interaction with peers is essential for success, not just in the university, in college, but if you are an administrator, you want to retain faculty, you want to retain staff, that's also the case for individuals. We value belongingness. And so that was an added point. I'm not going to charge you for that little piece, but I really wanted to say that. I'm going to say something about NSBE. How many of you are NSBE members here? Great, great. You all should be raising your hands, by the way. But anyway, it's even for the faculty and administrators. But certainly I'll say a few words about NSBE, what we're trying to accomplish, our 2025 challenge. And then the heart of this presentation really will be about our 50K coalition. One of the things that frustrates me coming back into this space as a former NSBE member and NSBE leader and national chair is the fragmentation. Everywhere I turn, someone is doing something in STEM. And they're great programs. You know, 10s here, 20s here, scores of students here, hundreds, maybe even thousands. We started a program called the Science of Baseball at MIT for 8th grade boys who taught the math and science associated with baseball and allowed them to scrimmage in the afternoon. I've got a mentee who started a program called STEM for Dance in New York City, where you teach young girls how to dance and then apply dance to STEM. And then there are a number of people who are just adding letters to STEM, right? We've heard STEAM, about architecture or the arts. I've heard C-STEM, communication and STEM. STEM-H, which is about healthcare and healthcare industry. They just keep adding letters. When we were doing, there were just 3 letters, right? STEM, science, engineering, and math. And so there are a number of these things, but the problem is not a lack of great ideas. The problem is a lack of coordination. And so I'll talk with you about the 50K coalition and what we're trying to accomplish using a collective impact mentality. So a good preacher tells them what you're going to tell them, tells them, and then tells them what you told them, right? So that's really what I'm doing. So, a little about me. I think the key is, and Justin was very kind in talking about this, I really wanted to know why certain students were successful and others were not. So I got to MIT, public school trained all my life. I did attend a magnet school in the last 3 years. It was a bus from an all-black community in Roosevelt, Long Island, to East Meadow, Tresper Clark in Long Island. And so there were 80 of us. We took an exam. We went to this school for 3 years. And it was an interesting transition, let me just say. It involved bats and chains and that kind of thing. It was very kind of emotionally challenging in that experience, but ultimately became very successful. Public school, then I went to MIT. And you know, my first exam, I got a 38. It was a bad exam. I mean, and this was after I was in a bridge program all summer long, learning chemistry. And I got a 38 in the fall. And I started to wonder, why, I mean, is this, I see a couple of smiles. Is this really place for me? My roommate, private school trained all his life, Friends Academy and Friends, all the Friends schools and so on. had a deep knowledge of chemistry, majoring in chemical engineering, and a year and a half later, he flamed out. He left, didn't finish. And I ultimately buckled down and graduated with a decent GPA, 4.5 out of 5.0, went on to get a master's degree, etc. Why is it that I was successful? Why was I successful and he wasn't? And so ultimately, I actually did some studies as a graduate student to understand why. What are some of the factors that contribute to success, not failure, right? So I wanted to look at the success, and I'll share with you some of those things. And then I blog about it, and I'm actually writing a book about for students called Working Smarter, Not Just Harder, and just a process of how do you be successful in school. We mentioned UNCF, etc. But what really is key is I started my life as a NSBE member. I was a NSBE chapter member. I became involved doing outreach in the Boston and Cambridge area, bringing students to campus and exposing them to engineering. I really loved it. The problem was I was in my junior year at this point, and I needed to get my degree. But I was just thinking maybe I wouldn't be an engineer ultimately. But nevertheless, I actually loved this, and I discovered what my ultimate passion was during NSBE. And one of the things that NSBE does, it really does give the students a chance of leadership and discover their element. So we were established in 1975 by 6 students from Purdue University. They're all from the south side of Chicago. And they put out a call to all the engineering institutions back in 1975 to send their black students to West Lafayette, Indiana in the spring of 1975. They actually turned around the success or the failure of the minority students there on campus. In 1971, 80% of all African American engineering students failed. They left the school in 1971. By 1974, they had a 60% graduation rate. They built a program, a minority engineering program that Angie leads here. They built a program there, and we didn't really know what minority engineering programs were, but they wanted to share the story with other institutions. 32 institutions sent 40 students to West Lafayette in the spring of 1975, and they chartered the National Society. We mentioned 31,000 because that's on our roster, but we know we have 16,000 active members, those who renew every year, that cover the pre-collegiate, collegiate, and professional ranks. We do 15 conferences and conventions. Our last convention in Boston had 11,500 participants. It's one of our 15 hotels in Boston. We're going to be in Kansas City this year, and we're projecting out that we're going to be near 15,000 folks who will come together for our conventions. And really, one of the things I really want to emphasize is not only academic achievement, career readiness, but leadership development and self-efficacy. I'm going to use that word a lot, which means that confidence that I'm going to be successful in this domain and this task. If you are self-efficacious about that classroom, you're going to be the one that asks questions. You're going to be the one that pursues that faculty member. You're going to be the one that take on teaching that hard course in that class. But if you're not, you're going to shrink back. You're not going to take advantage of those opportunities, and certainly not going to be resilient when you encounter difficulty. And so one of the things that we do is we foster this self-efficacy. So a recent study that was done, that was presented at ASCE, American Society for Engineering Education, and this is based on just one campus in the Midwest. The African American students who are members of NSBE graduated at a 10 times higher rate than those African American students who are not part of NSBE. So 7% versus 70% graduation rate. And one of the things, the reason is we kind of create this ecosystem. And I say this about NSBE, but this could be applied to SWE, SHPE, ACES. It could be applied to any group. I lived on campus at MIT in a dormitory called Chocolate City. It was established, I get a couple of looks like, what? Chocolate City was the name of a Parliament Funkadelic album in the early 1970s. And MIT built a brand new dorm in which there were 6 living groups. And all the black males, several of the black males, including my brother, got together and created a dorm, 28 guys who lived it, and they named it Chocolate City after the Parliament Funkadelic album. Well, Chocolate City, I ultimately lived in Chocolate City as he did. a few years later. And then I came back and became their freshman advisor. At one point, the guys at Chocolate City, who had parties that were known all up and down the East Coast, had the highest GPA of every member of the 350 people who were in that dormitory, because of some of the things that we learned. So it doesn't really matter NSBE, it doesn't matter the shift, etc. But these are the factors that are associated with it. One, the environment. There is a given kind of attention to the environment where affirmation is key. And as I mentioned, the quality of the interaction vertically. So one of the things I used to do with my freshmen is they introduced them to the president. They met the provost, they met the dean of engineering, they met the dean of the freshman class, they met a number of people in roundtable discussions. So it demystified the institution. But they also learned how to work in study groups and hold each other accountable as well. With proper attributions, they would have check-ins the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of my seminar. How did you do on that physics problem set? How did you do on that exam? And making sure they're making the proper attributions about their performance and then holding each other accountable. They would actually create a pact among themselves. They would actually brainstorm, okay, this is the pact that we're going to create so that we're going to graduate together with a 4.5 out of 5.0 GPA. We're going to hold each other accountable to attend class and to not miss any assignments. No diseases and no babies during our 4 years. I mean, they were really raw, but that was their pact. So that integration is key. And so giving attention to the environment. If you think about a pyramid, at the top of the pyramid, the environment. And this is based on Albert Bandera's work on self-efficacy. NSBE does this by really kind of aligning creating an environment of support and peer affirmation. Motivation. Making sure students are making the proper mindset about their performance, approaching their mindset. Karl Reid's done a lot of work about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. A lot of successful students like me have a fixed mindset. They believe that they are intelligent because they were born that way. And it's partly true as well. But as a result of a fixed mindset person is not likely to take certain risks. Because their mentality, their focus is of putting themselves in a situation to affirm how smart they are, right? And so you're reluctant to put yourself in a situation where you look dumb in that situation. Well, that's what engineering is, right? Engineering is all, we look dumb every day, right? And if you're baseball, you fail 7 times out of 10, you make the Hall of Fame. That's like engineering. So growth mindset says that mastery is the goal, not looking smart. And so you're willing to put yourself out there in order to get to that mastery experience. So making sure students are making the right attribution and mindsets as well. And that's what a lot of NSBE does. We create this mindset around success and failure and appreciating failure in order to get to success. Behavior, this is key. Learning how to learn. I had some students in my summer program at Light for high school, talented high school students who never took notes in high school, never had to take notes in high school. And then they get their behind kicked when they get to college, right? It's like, what do you mean I have to take notes? I never knew how to do this. I never approached this. And so learning how to learn, learning how to approach your work through deliberate practice. And this is not, everybody attributes it to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, but there's been a lot of research around this deliberate practice of studying and working problems and developing a cadence of learning how to learn. And I want to talk to some of the students about that. How do you use study groups? I used to hate study groups because they're a waste of time, but knowing how to use them effectively is key. And I'll give you a tip on that. Working alone, then working in groups, then working alone. You can't just start working in groups because it's not a best use of time. Working alone, working in groups, working alone. Then finally, and this is the one that most people kind of forget, that we all have an identity. Whether it's gender, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's race and ethnicity, whether it's sexual orientation, we have an identity. And in certain settings, our identity becomes more salient. So depending on the setting, certain aspects of our identity gets triggered. Just like you know, kind of in chemistry, you kind of apply a certain chemical or certain compound to a chemical to a compound, and certain things get expressed. Like us in identity, certain things get expressed. And if there is a negative stereotype associated with that component of our identity, there's research that shows our performance will be suppressed because we're not functioning well if we're under stress, we're under distress. And Claude Steele and others call that stereotype, threat, etc. So it's very important that students feel that they can bring their whole selves into a setting. So when you come to a NSBE conference and the students stand up and say, to increase the number of culturally responsible black engineers, there's a certain sense of pride that's associated with it. I can bring my whole self as an African American. I don't have to suppress the fact that I'm smart in this setting, which is what I had to do all throughout my high school years, right? I had to suppress how smart I was. What Majors and Nilsson call the cool pose that a lot of black males kind of have, because they don't want to give off any kind of impression that they don't understand or that they do understand. It's a cover that we have. Unfortunately, that cover means that if we're in problems, if we're in distress, we're not going to share that with anybody. We're going to go in the corner and work it out ourselves. But what we do is we try to help students bring their whole selves. So you can ask the students here, do they feel like they can bring their whole selves into the classroom, into the laboratories, into the dormitories, into the gathering areas, the student centers, etc. If they feel that they can do that as a barometer, then you know you have really reached to a point of inclusion. So diversity is necessary because that speaks to numbers. Inclusion is necessary because that speaks to climate. And students have to feel that they can bring their whole self. So again, I really, really think that the reason NSBE works is because we create this ecosystem around students there. All right, so I'm going to give you a tidbit of my research and just show kind of where this all comes from, and then I'm going to shift gears to the 50K Coalition. So I really wanted to know, and I talked about this early in my preamble, I really wanted to know why certain students were successful and why others were not. And I made the arguments using Vincent Tintos that it's the quality of interaction with faculty and the quality of interaction with peers are the real reasons why certain students are successful. And he makes the argument students stay in college because of this. And I would argue workers stay at the job because of this, right? If that's the case, what are the moderators? What are the things that drive someone to have good relationships with faculty? What are the factors that contribute to social integration on campus in that case? And I make the argument that academic self-efficacy, if I am confident in my capability, in my abilities, I'm more likely to reach out to the Dr. Schwartzes and the Dr. Grants and others in the room and connect with them and approach them or ask questions or catch them during their board time, etc. But if I'm not, then I'm going to hold back. And I was that student. Even though I'm acting a fool in front of you right now, I'm a very introverted person, and so I was somewhat shy as a student. So I was very reluctant to approach faculty. In my mind, in my West Indian culture, you don't talk to adults, right? You don't talk to adults, right? I mean, you respect adults, but you don't talk back. Where in certain cultures, particularly in the Jewish culture and some of the others, they actually have a Socratic table around the dinner table, right? Where children are engaging in discourse, etc. So moving into a school setting, it's much more comfortable for certain groups to make that transition and others not to. So I really felt that if I can leverage and build a young person's self-efficacy, then they are more likely to make the interaction with faculty. And if I can really help them feel comfortable in their own skin, in terms of who they are, you kind of eliminate racial and add whatever identity is that is salient for you into that, then you're more likely to make the connection socially and engage on campus. And so you can see that there are some sources of this: mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, seeing someone with whom you can relate having success, verbal judgment, I call that the Home Depot, which is you can do it, we can help. You know, that's just hearing somebody have that valuable kind of, oh wow, you know, like my freshman advisor, Williams, Member Clarence, and the physiological states as well, all of which contribute to self-efficacy. And so this is the leverage, and this is indeed what I found in my work. Academic self-efficacy was correlated with academic integration. And that makes sense, right? If a faculty member like Ted Schifrin said to me in my second semester freshman year, who was my multivariable calculus instructor, asked me if I would consider majoring in math, I don't think I touched the ground for a week after that, right? That's a powerful statement, and it really affirmed me as a student as well. And then racial identity, helping students really kind of understand who they are and appreciate who they are, and in such a way that it doesn't preclude them from making connections outside of their reference group, outside of their race and ethnicity. I talk about someone who is, and I know I'm in North Carolina, so I may not be in friendly territory, but I talk about President Obama as someone who's racially internalized. He is really comfortable in his own skin. How do you know that? The first African-American president puts a basketball court in the White House. I mean, if he wasn't internalized, there would be some reluctance to doing that, right? And some of us are reluctant, frankly, to eat watermelon with mixed company, right? Because we don't want to be associated with a stereotype in that. If you are internalized, you'll order seconds, right? You know, the watermelon, or whatever it is that are associated with that negative stereotype. And so getting students, getting young people, even faculty, early faculty, etc., getting people to really be comfortable in their own skin, they can bring their own self, leads to that. So this is what I discovered in my study of the most successful African-American students and others in subsequent work. Had high confidence, had strong relationships with faculty, were more socially integrated in campus, and this might be committees and clubs, things like that. And then they possess a strong racial identity. And what NSBE does is operationalize these conditions. Okay, so what's the challenge and what are we trying to accomplish with the 50K? This is the challenge, ladies and gentlemen. Despite 41 years of NSBE and probably 35 years of SHPE and ACES and others, SWE, we're really not moving the needle significantly. The top line shows the share of women who earn engineering degrees, and the bottom line is the percentage of underrepresented groups who earn engineering degrees. So women who contribute, who are associated with 51% of the general population, fairly around 20% of all engineering degrees. And for African American, Latino, and Native American populations, now 30% of the general population, according to recent census, only about 14% of engineering degrees. And the only uptick you see here is largely because of the Hispanic population. The Latinos, the number of engineers are really spiking up the last couple of years, which is a great thing, but it's not translating into the African American and the Native American populations. So this is a grand challenge that we really have to address. And I understand your dean has really been a part of the Engineering Dean's Council and some of the others, and they're taking up this issue as well across the ASCE deans. So how do we scale? How do we get to scale? I kind of did a simple Google search on scale, and this came up. This is the tallest bridge. Some of your faculty probably were involved in developing and building this bridge from 2001 to 2004 in France, one of the tallest bridges in the world. But it's how do we get to scale? We know what works, ladies and gentlemen. We know that high-touch contact with students works, but how do you scale that up, right? I mean, you're 10,000 students, I think, in the College of Engineering, one of the largest engineering schools in the country. I think it's not the largest, right? Is it the largest? No, close. It's very, very close. You're getting to some level of scale, certainly, but when I show you some of the numbers, we have to do a whole lot more, especially around underrepresented groups. So, how do we do that? So we have established our own strategic goal to triple the number of engineers this country produces, to work with the colleges and universities to really transform engineering education, help to transform engineering education, but more importantly, to produce more. And so we're working with our chapters, NSBE chapters, because it sounds like a big number to triple the number of engineers. But if every one of our 220 collegiate chapters graduate 3 additional students a year, just incrementally 3, we can get there. And so we've broken the equation down to very simple math. 3 additional students a year. And we're working with the chapters on how to do that. We work with the admissions office to increase yield, et cetera, et cetera. Our vision is to make engineering a mainstream word. For our young people, it's unlikely that they'll interact with an engineer. Only 3.5% to 4% of all practicing engineers are African Americans, slightly more for Hispanic. I believe it's around 6 or 7%. For Native American, about less than 1%, et cetera. So it's unlikely that they'll interact with an engineer and see an engineer. Certainly, if you Google the word engineer, 17 of the first 20 images are white males with hard hats, okay? And so even the young people don't see engineers on the internet, and certainly not on television. So we will need to get to scale. So this is an analysis that we did that looked at the time, there were 3,501 graduates according to ASCE. And we backed it up and said at age 8, there were about 650,000 African American 8-year-olds. Okay? And these 8-year-olds would then become the graduates by 2014. And then we looked at where are the blockages in the pipeline. We believe 4th grade math proficiency, 8th grade math proficiency, and completing calculus are key gateways. If you are in the lowest quartile of 4th grade, you're 60% likely to be the lowest quartile of the 8th grade in proficiency. And you're unlikely to have someone patting you in the back saying, you know, you're good at math, you should be an engineer, right? It's unlikely that that will happen. And so, we kind of feel that getting to 4th and 8th grade and completing calculus by high school are keys to getting more young people into engineering. And by the way, this is for African Americans. We can do the analysis for any other group as well. What do we need to get to? We need to get to 28% of 4th graders at proficiency in math. We need to get to 22%, so more than nearly double, well not nearly double, nearly double 8th grade math proficiency. And completing calculus as well. And then doubling the number, more than doubling the number of those who complete calculus who enroll in engineering, and then certainly doubling the engineering completion rate, or increasing the engineering completion rate. And so what we need to do is get to scale. Now, and on any good day, NSBE programs reach maybe 20,000 people, right? On any good day. SHPE's probably about the same, SWE maybe more. But we got to get to scale. And we're engineers. We know how to do that, right? But we've never really applied it to this program. And so that's to this effort. So that's what we're trying to do. We've partnered with a lot of corporations, and we've just received a couple of NSF grants, including an Includes grant, to really get to this area of defragmentation and focus our efforts. So as I shift now, I want to talk about the 50K Coalition. When I met the heads of SHPE, SWE, and ACES, I asked them, what would your challenge be if our challenge is 10,000? 10,000 black engineers annually by 2025. Can you come up with a goal that you can set as well for your organization? And ultimately, when they all submitted their goals for 2025, it came to about 50,000. 50,000 black, Latino, female, and Native American engineers annually by 2025, or roughly a 66% increase over the 30,000 at the baseline. And so we created this coalition. We put together this coalition of the 4 leading diversity organizations across the country. And then we reached out. We identified the top colleges and universities that graduate these populations. We reached out to corporations that demonstrated success in producing and supporting these efforts. We reached out to the engineering disciplinary societies, the IEEEs, the ASMEs, the ASCEs, and so on, and MOUSEs, to really put all these groups together. And we reached out to other advocacy groups, NACSI, the National Action Council for Minorities, that was MOUSE, M-O-U-S-E. And we've assembled a group of 43 organizations to work on this common goal, to produce 50,000 Black, Latino, Native American, and female engineers annually by 2025. Now, how do we do that? We're using an approach called collective impact. Is anybody familiar with collective impact at all? You've heard a couple of people have. Collective impact is a brilliant approach to bring together public and private organizations around common goals. And there are several really good examples. Strive in Cincinnati around college access and completion. They brought together a coalition of organizations to focus on increasing the number of students from in the case of Cincinnati or in the case of Syracuse, say yes, who are ready for college. 20,000 in Syracuse, working on collectively making sure that students are successful. They have 7 metrics that they focus on. That's it. And Strive has many more, really from cradle to graduation. There have been some other really good, great approaches around collective impact, around childhood obesity in Somerville, Massachusetts, environmental cleanup, as well as STEM education. And so the Battelle Foundation out of Columbus, Ohio, has created this STEMX initiatives, and they've got 24 cities where they've created ecosystems around STEM. I joined the DC STEM network, and we're looking to make DC a STEM city from beginning to end. So what is collective impact? Well, there are 5 major components of collective impact. One is shared agenda. Everybody agrees to a common agenda, common set of themes that they work toward. So our big goal, strategic goal, is 50,000. Our shared agenda, which I'll tell you about, has certain themes that everyone will work toward. And selectively too. Some will say, well, you know, our effort is around K-12. Others will say it's ours is around faculty development. But nevertheless, we're all working toward a common goal. Shared measurement. How are we going to measure our progress? And how are we going to report out our progress toward that? Mutually reinforcing activities. This is where this is different. I don't ask Northrop Grumman to join NSBE's program and be a part of NSBE program. I asked Northrop Grumman, what are you doing to support this effort? Submit your plans and we'll roll it up into a master plan. This way, everyone can leverage their skill sets. By the way, collective impact can be used for anything on campus. If you want to reduce violence on campus, or violence against women, you want to do anything, groups can work together toward that common goal. There's an old passage of scripture that I kind of grew up with. It's 2 are better than 1 because they have better return for their work. And a cord of 3 is not easily broken. So you have people working together toward a common goal. It's much more powerful. In 1944, Frederick Douglass Patterson, who was the president of the Tuskegee Institute, saw that many black college presidents were going to the same funders, Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, et cetera, and making the case, the same case. And he said, why don't we form a United Negro Fundraising Organization? That's what we were called back then, United Negro Fundraising Organization. And they did. In 1944, they chartered UNCF. And that year, Andy Rockefeller, who chaired that campaign, raised $750,000 for the 27 private historically black colleges and universities since that time. Since that time, they've raised $4 billion to support over 400,000 students getting college degrees. So there are great models around collective impact. We just have to think about creatively how to do that. And that's what the mutually reinforcing activities do. Continuous communication, making sure all the partners are aware of what's going on, they're sharing best practices, they're convening and disseminating information. And finally, a backbone support. This is where a lot of collective impact efforts, collaborative efforts fall short, because they ask people who are already tapped out to participate on a panel or a group or an activity cross-functionally to lead this without naming a head. You know, my pastor used to say a dog with two heads is an anomaly, right? You gotta have a head. You gotta have someone who's held responsible for the success of this group. And that's why effective collective impact have a backbone support. So we just received a $300,000 includes grant to actually put the continuous communication and backbone support in motion for the 50K coalition. We also received a grant from the United Engineering Foundation for actually another $200,000, and a couple of corporations have also invested in this area. So now we've got $500,000 for the next 2 years to put together this organization, and we're positioning ourselves to go after includes for a $2.5 million alliance grant. So, what are the common agenda items? The common agenda items, we pulled together these 43 organizations. They came together in Washington, D.C. In April. And we identified these as the key areas that will get us to the 50K. Undergraduate support and retention, faculty development, public awareness, marketing, K-12 support, community college linkages, culture and climate, and funding and support. Now, later on, we're going to have some roundtable with some of the faculty members, and we're going to really talk about what can North Carolina State bring to this effort, along this effort around 50,000 diverse engineers annually by 2025. What kinds of things can we do? And I'll share with you some of the examples that we're working on as well, what NSBE's working on. And around shared measurement, degrees awarded, K-12. We feel that rather than focusing on 4th grade or 8th grade, if we focus on just the AP calculus completion and high school graduates, it's really kind of a means, an important means to an end, because not all the groups and the organizations have programs that go down into middle school like we do or elementary school. Transfer rates. This is an area that we really haven't done very much with in NSBE. How do we build targeted connections? How many of you students who are here came out of community college? So what was remarkable to us is that we found that 50% of Latino or Hispanic PhDs started in the community college system. And we really haven't done a good job of articulating, not more so than articulating agreements, but understanding what the transition needs to be for these. In fact, I just spent some time at Houston Community College. We don't even have an NSBE chapter there. And so we're looking to kind of create these kind of linkages. And then retention rates. And this is first to second year retention, right? So this is the document. I did add it. This is the document that everyone signed at our convening, just kind of speaking to what we're going to accomplish together. And it's really a powerful moment at our convening. And over the next 2 years, we're going to add other institutions and organizations as part of it as well. So this is what our scorecard looks like. So we are creating these dashboards. It's a cloud-based dashboard for every organization to contribute. So this is the University of Maryland. They contributed their summer bridge program for scientists and engineers. And you can't see this, but it's the time period. When is the start of the program? When is the end of the program? The actual value, so what are the numbers? How many students are graduating? How many students are completing or participating, in this case of the summer bridge program, who fall into those 4 categories? Target value, the current trend, and the baseline against percent change. And this rolls up into a master plan so that we'll have a dashboard for all 43 organizations that participate in this effort. So just want to show you that we're making a lot of progress. This happens to be one of the common agenda items, retention and support services. But we have the dashboards for all the common agenda items as well. And I'm just going to close out by just talking about one example of some of the work that we're doing. NSBE, with Purdue and others, put together a paper that identified 9 engagement strategies that colleges that have been successful with underrepresented students in their graduation rate have done. That paper is available. It was underwritten by ExxonMobil. these are the nine strategies of institutional leadership commitment. So I'm thrilled to see that your dean here making a commitment to diversity and increasing some of bridge programs, collaborative learning and living environments. I understand that you've got that baked into the Centennial campus as well, bringing students in, especially freshmen like Prairie View A&M has done, has really proven very successful. Facilitated study groups using the Uri Treisman model of bringing together students with a graduate student or upperclassman, facilitating study groups focused on problem solving. It's been proven successful. Early alert systems, performance-based scholarships, not just scholarships, but performance-based scholarships. So structuring scholarships to incentivize the students to complete their semester and do well. Fostering self-efficacy, we've got some strategies there, positive racial identity, and then faculty development. And I understand some of that is what Dr. Grant is focused on, but making sure faculty really understand things like unconscious bias and how that influences their behaviors, like several faculty are doing. And then there are a few other interventions we cite in the paper, but we really don't build around, because these were, the top 9 were the ones that several exemplars have employed. And then we partnered with American Society for Engineering Education to develop a toolkit. So we've taken these, which is more of an academic approach, and said, okay, how do you implement those? And that toolkit is available, the print version is available now, and the online version will be available in a couple of weeks as well. So let me just finish up. We're working very, very hard on the coalition. We've got a lot of great things happening. We're going to be finishing up all the member action plans that you saw. You saw University of Maryland there by the end of January. And then we're planning on having another convening in April in Washington, D.C. And so, depending on how our conversations go, I'd love to have representatives from North Carolina State to be a part of this as well. This is a movement, ladies and gentlemen. We're really working on something great. We're going to move the needle. And my goal is to really cite the fact that this is probably a $150 million, $200 million effort. And if the National Science Foundation and some of the other government agencies, or the Zuckerberg Foundation, the Gates Foundation, others really want to move the needle, this is really how we'll do it. And the funding that we're going to get will be granted to institutions like yours to build the capacity to do more. You have great success, you have great graduation rates, I've looked them up, but you can do more, and I'm sure we can all do more collectively. So with that, I really want to thank you for your time.
Do you have time for questions?
Yes.
You laid out a pretty detailed plan. What do you think the largest barrier will be to accomplishing?
I think the largest barrier, first of all, is staying focused. This is a 5-year, 10-year run, and we have political ADHD in our organizations and as well. Now, fortunately, those of you who are familiar with SWE, do we have any SWE members? We have a few. So they've had a long history of leadership, consistent leadership, until Karen Horton took over, which is great. NSBE has had sort of spotty leadership. SHPE is really, frankly, all over the place at this point in the organization. So I think just making sure there's consistency of leadership and consistency of communication. That's one thing. The other thing is mind share. So we approach one college, major, very large engineering college in Texas, and one of the big cities. I'm not going to name the school, but it's in the capital. And, and they came to our convening, and then they said, well, we're already doing a lot of work, so why should we join this coalition? And so they pulled out. And we're saying that's the purpose of the coalition, to bring what you're doing to this whole combined effort. So it's explaining this, and it's so different from anything we've done. But we know that it's not going to be successful if I ask you to put my program in your school, or you to put your program in my organization. It's just not going to work. So collective effort, impact is education. And that's the biggest challenge. And then the third is funding. My goal is that I'm really a big fan of capacity building. So if you're doing something that's successful, then you should be able to scale up. If you have an idea that could be successful and you want to pilot, then you need the resources to do that. And that's the goal of this effort, ultimately, to really provide the funds to the partners so that they can scale up existing efforts or really pilot new efforts. So we are basically looking at being a small NSF to really try to build that. Yes?
Thank you for coming. I was really struck by the percentage of students that are behind by 4th grade. And I know that there are a lot of programs where people go in and focus on helping students at that level learn to read. Are there parallel efforts? Is NSBE thinking about anything that would be parallel in math?
Yes, we didn't talk about it much, but we started in 2007 a summer engineering experience for kids program, SEEK. These are free 3-week summer interactive camps that teach young people engineering and engineering process. So every week they focus on designing and building a toy, and they compete, etc. What we discovered by accident, that their math proficiency increases from the beginning of the program to the end of the program. And so now we're much more intentional about that. We've reached 18,000 young people since the start in 2007. We got another NSF iTest grant to expand those camps to 31. So we'll be reaching 28,000 young people by 2019 during the course of the summer. But again, as you can see, that doesn't really scratch the surface. So what our strategy is to go to the GAP approach and McDonald's approach, and that's to franchise the SEEK program. But also, in order to get to the numbers we have to get to, we really have to leverage technology. And we are working with Alex. I don't know if you're familiar with Alex, which is an expert-based system that shows young kids it's a progressive learning environment for mathematics that even some of the universities use. And Purdue, I know, is using Alex. So it kind of scales with the students and their levels. We believe that the answer to that question is a technology solution, but it requires some sort of a touch, and sometimes no personal touch. You just can't give someone an Alex license for $50 and say, okay, I see you in 12 years. We really have to have some sort of support structure around that. But we're looking to expand our programs, partner with others to scale, the Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs and others, and then also look for other technology solutions. By the way, there are several K-12 initiatives within the 50K coalition as well. Some of the organizations are doing something very proactively around these common goals. Yes.
You mentioned that a major goal of the coalition is not to try and recreate your program in another institution, but it seems to me that some lessons learned and some ideas would certainly translate. An organization like 4-H has those in structure in place to make those contacts with a lot of individuals. And something like that SEEK, if you could get in touch with that and do it that way, that's one way. Yes. Another idea is that some populations are similar. So whatever Texas is doing may translate to North Carolina or South Carolina more than it might to Purdue, yes, Indiana.
So what I did say was the collective impact approach typically centers around working groups. and we're deciding that we're going to develop these working groups around the common effort. So back to the gentleman's question about math, there will likely be a working group around all the organizations that are part of our coalition around K-12, so that they can share their practices and their best practices, and think about, there may be some collaboration, which we're not going to say from the front of the top end, do this, collaborate. Some groups want to and some don't, but let it happen organically, and then share their best practices. So we have bi-monthly webinars, and in bi-monthly webinars, we're showcasing great programs that can be shared and perhaps across the network. So SHPE is doing some things, we're doing SEEK, so we're going to be sharing some of the work that we're doing, with the possibility that others will take on these initiatives. So yes, the working groups are going to be the means, the vehicle around sharing, specifically around undergraduate retention, faculty development, climate, culture and climate, et cetera. That's the mechanism that we're using for better sharing. Thank you. Yes.
All of the sorry. All of the programs that you've described, or at least most of them, are opt-in. They require a student to actually go to the camp or join the dorm, or these are all for students who already have that urge to community. I fear that there are a number of those along the way that are never going to have that urge. I mean, can we get to 50,000 with only the opt-in people?
It's a great question, and I don't think it's there, but one of the common agenda areas that might have fallen off the screen is policy. Because out of school time is a strategy, but it's not going to get us to 50K, to your point. So it's got to be in school, and some of the efforts has got to be done in school. That's a bigger problem. I think we were very supportive of the next generation science standards and the Common Core, largely because it does kind of stimulate critical thinking, analytical reasoning, problem solving. We can't train young people for jobs that exist today. We need to train them to give them intellectual skills to create the jobs of the future. But it has to be done in the top end, and that's why I like these collective impact approaches that are school district wide. But I can't answer that question other than through policy changes. Yeah, it's a frustrating question, but it has to be addressed. I agree with you. Yes.
Do you see HBCUs and minority serving institutions playing a unique role in this, or are you kind of just considering that just in line with any university?
So they are part of the coalition. Several of them we invited Prairie View, A&M, Morgan State was there. These are really top institutions and minority serving institutions. There were one or two other Hispanic serving institutions that were part of that. I think so. If you think about the number of these institutions, HBCUs represent only 3% of the four-year college and university, and they produce between 22 and 28% of all African American engineers. They're doing something well, and so those lessons should be shared. And I'll tell you what it is. It's that model that I shared: the quality of interaction with the faculty, the quality of interaction with peers, self-efficacy, and identity development. And so that ethic of care that is there, I'm hoping that they can share those elements and bring them to these institutions like North Carolina State. MIT, what we did, we created a bubble through our Office of Minority Education that took the kind of elements of the HBCU for those students. So I think that they can be a part of it in the sharing. It's got to be critical, but also I really believe that there are lessons that can be learned at HBCU. Doing more with less, and one of the things that I've been working on with a major grant we got from Northrop Grumman, $2 million, is giving them the resources to do more with less. I think I have one more question.
Wondering in terms about getting more than what you're talking about. So, how getting kids to actually learn different ways of doing it. This, to my understanding, is the current Common Core system does not really encourage other ways of thought. It's do it this specific way.
Actually, Common Core is the opposite. From what I understand the Common Core, and there are some of you who are much more knowledgeable about it, the Common Core followed the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, and there were a lot of open-ended pieces in there. So Common Core is the standard. And then what you may be referring to is how a school district implemented Common Core. They typically have to buy a curriculum that says it tends to point back to a Common Core, but the curriculum is what teachers know, unfortunately. So what we need to do is we need to create structures to better prepare teachers for that open-ended thought, to move from stage on a stage to more of a coach, where they're you structure the classroom in different ways. And that's a structural problem, I think, getting back to your question. I mean, my children, I'll give you a quick example, I know we're running out of time, but my children, so when I went to public school, as I mentioned, I learned American history. When I walked in the classroom, I had 3 boards, and every piece of real estate was filled up, right? The teacher, and we would spend the first 20 minutes just copying down everything that she would put up, okay? That's how I learned American history. My children in 6th grade, private school education, they learned American history, they learned the Declaration of Independence and the history of it, they put on a play, and then their capstone project in 6th grade was to write your own Declaration of Independence. Wow! I was sitting there as an adult saying, man, if I had that kind of education, where would I be? Where you're actually training young people to be thinkers. But in order to do that, you really have to have classrooms with 13 kids in the class, and not 40 in LA, or 43, I think it is the standard in LA, or 36 in Montgomery County, Maryland. That's at 32, I believe the number is. It's hard to do that when you have 32 and you have 5 classes, 150, etc. So there are structural constraints to doing that. So as a result, we simplify it down to the common denominator. And I really believe it. So the answer is we've got to flip the classrooms, right? We've got to use the classroom time for engagement, and then give the out-of-school time for the students to get the content knowledge. That's the approach that we've got to deploy. And there are some colleagues at both at the university level, Olin College, and University of Illinois, but actually at the K-12, that are really looking at that from engineering education standpoint. But yeah, we need, and finally, we need more teachers. We really need more. We have math folks teaching math in 3rd and 4th grade. And you just can't do that. I mean, you can't communicate your enthusiasm for a subject if you're afraid of it, fundamentally. So let me get off my soapbox. But I think you have this.
Yeah, so kind of following on that, when a lot of people talk about scaling education outside of the context of distance education, online, using mentorship, and what are the thoughts on the role of that?
Yeah, distance education. I think are you somebody who's distance educated? Oh yes. So scaling, I do agree with that. So several years ago, MIT, among other institutions, went to OpenCourseWare and put up their courses, 18,000 or so, 1,800 courses available for free. And I was meeting with Tom McNanty, the dean at the time, and he wanted to bring that down to the high school level. And my concern was to provide courseware, free courseware for high schools to take and download and implement from MIT, have that brand, et cetera. And of course, later on, MOOCs and have been created. The problem with that is the resourced schools will take advantage of that, and the under-resourced schools will not. And so I said to Tom, what we really need to do is create these SWAT teams that take the content from OpenCourseWare and bring them to the school and the school districts and help them. You really have to help them. We're in Detroit Public Schools. I used to recruit for the Mike program every year. And I walked into a school. This is a large comprehensive high school, neighborhood high school. The math teacher, the head of the math department, I'm sorry, not the math teacher, head of math department, head of science department, and several other teachers. And I walked in, sit down with my suit on. I'm recruiting juniors to my free summer program, and the first question is, why are you here? I had to convince them that they are worthy for me to be there to recruit their students first before I tell them about the program. It's called mission marketing, right? So how is that communicated to the kids every day, day in and day out? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but we really do have to tell the story and create the why, and then the what that has to follow. And I think that distance education is key, as long as there's infrastructure for us to take advantage. But you really need that SWAT team. You really need that rapid deployment team to go in and support these low resource schools to ensure that they take full advantage of these resources.
You want to do one more, or you want to?
I'm ready to go as long as, hey, my flight's not at 6:30, so I got me until.
All right, thank you. So
Let me just make a quick announcement before you, then we'll go back to questions from faculty that want to leave. I want to remind all faculty, staff, we've got 2 faculty roundtable sessions scheduled, one at 11, one at 3, both from EB 13018. Those are open to faculty, staff from everywhere on campus. Bring a friend. They're unstructured because it could be any topic where NC State and NSBE might interact, but it's not limited engineering, it's open door. So I just want to remind faculty of that, and then we can go back to the question.
okay, so you mentioned a little while ago, before you're still talking about the importance of teachers. You mentioned a lot about the K-12 process, and I know sometimes NSBE can tailor to undergraduate students. But what about this doctoral students? You mentioned the need for teachers, and of course there's a lot of underrepresented students who are, you mentioned the Latinx students who went to community college and they went to their PhDs. How does the retention or the interest of getting PhD students to go into faculty positions fit into your interventions you mentioned earlier?
Yes, I just heard that term this week, Latinx. Thank you for using it, reinforcing it. So let me give you an example. We used to run a bridge program at MIT, the Office of Minority Education. And we asked them as part of a survey, incoming students, how many of you have aspirations to get a master's degree or PhD? 92% of those incoming students, these are 80 students were invited to a summer program. They were admitted to the college, but we identified some gaps in their educational background. Like me, I never had chemistry or biology in high school, so I was invited to that program as well. 92%, but when we looked at 5 years later, how many of those students were in the master's or PhD program at MIT? They can go somewhere else, of course. I can count them on 2 hands. So something happens between that aspiration and the reality. So we created a program called the Laureates and Leaders Program. It's kind of modeled after the Ron Brown Scholars Program, where we identified freshmen and sophomores, now it's just sophomores, who had high potential, aspirations for graduate school, and we meet, again, based on that social interaction I told, social integration, we meet on a monthly basis with these students and cultivate their interest in graduate school. So every month there's a topic. One, making sure I identify a mentor, a faculty mentor, and doing the research on that faculty member, that background. 2, making sure that they are doing an undergraduate research project and helping them do that. Making sure they've identified other resources like GEM, Grad Lab, and a few other things. And every month there was a topic. And and they would meet for 2 years like this. So they developed a peer network among themselves as well. And so more of them were prepared to do that. I left the institution before we did an analysis to see, but I know this anecdotally that it's had some success. So I say all that to say we got to solve the bigger problem first, which is getting more of these folks like those in the room considering doctoral programs, and making sure that they are cultivated, their interest is cultivated throughout. We discovered that if a student had a research, undergraduate research project after their sophomore year, if we even controlling for their sophomore GPA, they graduated at higher rates and with higher GPAs, okay, if they did that. And they're more likely to consider graduate school. So undergraduate research opportunities is key to that. I don't know what the structure is here, but we had an 80% level, that 80% of our undergraduates were involved in undergraduate research. So that's the bigger problem. Then how many of those go into teaching is another challenge that's available. With our summer engineering camps, and I'm not even saying this at the doctoral level, summer engineering camps, we hire about 250 undergraduate students to teach these young people to do engineering, 60% of whom are engineering majors, another 20 or 25% are education majors, and the rest are scattered around political science, economics, et cetera, et cetera. What we've discovered, they get the bug. They get the teaching bug. They teach for 3 weeks. We train them for 1 week. They teach for 3 weeks, and many of them say, I love this. Like me, around education, that aha moment is addictive for us as educators. So we are going to be reaching out with other entities like 100K in 10, which is a big initiative to increase the number of math and science teachers, Teach for America and others, to see if we can cultivate that pool, because 2,800 mentors have taught in our program since we started. We actually can create a teacher education pipeline out of these engineering and education majors in our program. So I know I didn't answer your question directly, but indirectly, I think we can create a pipeline here intentionally by just using the assets we have today.
Well, first, I just wanted, on behalf of our college and City University, just want to thank you for being here today. I think you're probably aware, and you'll be even more aware as the day goes by, that there's a tremendous amount of commitment to many of the things that you're sharing with us. But what you're doing at the national level and your leadership in this is something that we all really appreciate and admire. And from my perspective anyway, I think I can almost guarantee you that there's no reason why we shouldn't come out of this with NC State as an additional part of the effort that you're doing. I mean, I know that you have that number out there. I think an important point to make is the achievement of that number in today's world would be the equivalent of graduating almost half of the total engineering computer science graduates that graduate in this country today. And the fact that we really need to make that happen, if not more, is extremely critical. Right? So thank you for all you're doing. I know we're going to spend more time at lunch, and I hope you have a great day here. But we're going to follow up on this, and I can guarantee you that you're going to leave today with an additional part.
Thank you. Thank you.